I'm going to now jump into a little bit about, you heard a little bit about what's going on in the market, what are some of those consumer trends. I'm going to deliver a little bit about, well, what does MLA do about that? What are some of the strategies and some of the initiatives and some of the opportunities and successes that MLA is looking at and has had over the last year or so, and to really take on some of those trends. So we're going to talk about, and marketers love to use this word about keeping red meat relevant. And, it's simply, how do we find out those things that are important to consumers and make sure that we are telling important stories about that so that they're realising that the product that we are marketing is meaningful to them in that context. And we're not talking about changing the world, but we're talking about changing their meals and making sure that we are front and centre in that conversation about what people are eating and what people are cooking. We'll talk a little bit about the work we do with major customers. Often our big ads get all the glory and the media, but what you'll see is there's a lot of work and a lot of meetings that go behind the scenes around making sure that we're right there with the key decision makers in the customers of red meat, the people that are making the decisions about what goes on the plate and what goes on the shelf. And that's a key thing that we'll talk about. And following on with that, how are we making sure that red meat continues to be at the forefront of menus, both at the high end, the top 100 restaurants, the fine dining, right down to the drive-through McDonald's, the aged care facility, the P&O cruise, which you would have seen a little bit over the day, a few days with Chef Uwe. So we'll talk a little bit about that. As Scott talked about, the domestic market remains the largest for Australian red meat, so it's still almost double the size of our nearest trading partner, and so it becomes a really important market for us. But we need to make no illusions, it is a tough competitive place as well, for all those reasons of fantastic incomes, for our love for red meat, we are a wealthy country, so we are a great target for our competitive proteins. And really this, as you saw in this chart before, we have really, moved apart from our competitors in pork and chicken and in affordability. And while it's great to be able to charge a premium, we need to make sure that people still see that red meat is a great deal to put on their table for their families or choose at an outlet to eat tonight. And so when we're looking at some of pork and chicken, we can see that they've definitely been able to keep those costs down back to consumers. So when it comes to what we're doing from a sort of a clear strategy point of view, there's really three things that we know we need to do really well. And that is relevance with consumers. We need to make sure that when people think about their meals, red meat is right there at the forefront and is a key choice for them. We need to make sure that we're tapping into all those things when people think about, well, what am I going to serve my family tonight, that we're ticking those boxes of the things they're looking for. And Scott touched on a couple of those things: quality, ease, versatility. First and foremost, does it taste good? There's a lot of products out there that will claim all kinds of things, whether it be health benefits or amazing convenience things, but if they don't taste good, people will not come back, and that's something that we have in spades, and we need to continually remind people that this is the eating experience. As a butcher once said in one of our panels, no one says, "Gee, I had a great chicken breast last night," but they do say, "Gee, I had a great steak," and that's things we've got to really work to deliver on. Retail category leadership is a part that we've been really ramping up, I would say, in the last 2 years. And this is about how do we help the storefront of our industry, which is retailers, both big and small, help them to realise the opportunity of red meat. Red meat in a supermarket is once you take away tobacco, is the biggest category they have. It's also one of the most important categories for them to bring consumers into their store. They get judged on it. Like fresh produce, fresh meat, if the quality is not there, if they're not seeing value, then customers will switch chains. So they have a huge vested interest in working with us, and we really make sure that we are delivering the best insights with them. And then menu penetration in food service. This is a fancy way of saying, how do we make sure red meat is on as many menus and as many outlets as we possibly can? Because if it's not there, you won't choose it. You're not going to walk out of a restaurant and go and choose somewhere else, usually because the menu is not what you thought it was. And we've got a whole process about how we're trying to make a difference there. And our wonderful corporate chef, Sam Burke, is right at the forefront of that. He's the man calling on the customers in that space. So really what we're trying to achieve is, as prices increase, we want people to feel good about that. We still want them to go, you know what, I still see value. This is still a great deal. So that idea around relevance, and that is just something that's meaningful to me in that situation. So we've just got to be really cognizant of meals, eating out, and how do we provide meaning in that. And those are the needs that we are talking about: quality, ease, versatility. As I've been preparing for the new Summer Lamb advertisement that won't be too far away and is in production right now, I was talking to some of the other people at MLA that are involved in the consumer insight space, and we were really trying to hone in, okay, what are we trying to achieve here, and what do we know about consumers that we can tap into? And through that process, we actually uncovered a research paper from 2004. And at the top of it was, we've never been busier. And I thought, wow, 2004, fairly much sort of, pre-smartphones, pre-Facebook, all those sorts of things, and so this isn't going away, and these are the types of needs that we need to tap into, and we need to make sure that our product is front and centre. When people think convenience, they think, yeah, absolutely, beef and lamb have solutions for me and my family. But it's not just about, how much does this cost and how much does this serve? And they're the functional needs. So they're the things that, yes, we need to satisfy. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on, and we heard a bit about that this morning. There's, how does this make me feel? Am I a good parent by feeding this to my kids? Am I going to be judged by my friends? If I go out for a dinner, if I host a dinner party, what do I serve? What does that say about me? Food is an emotional thing. We know that, eating together is one of the most important social things we can do. It's often the primer of great conversation. I'd sort of challenge anyone in the room here who hasn't probably had to do a tough conversation with a loved one or a friend or a business associate. You know what? Maybe let's do it over a meal or something like that, because it usually helps to get it across a little bit easier. So it's important that as we're marketing about this, we're not forgetting about all this hidden emotion that actually is tied up around food. And funnily enough, everyone goes, oh, look, Master Chef, and everyone must be cooking more and everything. Funnily enough, we're consuming more of that media, but we're actually not cooking anymore. We're doing Uber Eats, we're doing things in kits, we're picking up things at the supermarket that are already prepared. So it's, some of the complexity of what we have to deal with, what we have to get through. So, obviously, Scott Reardon here this morning, amazing Paralympian. You would have heard him speak last night at the social function. One of the things we are incredibly proud to bring to Australian beef over the next year is our sponsorship of the Australian Olympic team. This is really about giving Australian beef a fantastic way to talk about the role of red meat in a healthy diet. Next year, what you'll see TV campaign, full media partnership across some big, right through the games and right leading up to it. Social media will be telling stories of athletes, telling stories of greatness, telling stories of producers, telling stories of people like Peter there who are actually at the front line and talking about what does it mean for red meat and a healthy diet. We're going to be activating with retailers, so Woolworths is also a sponsor, but we're also going to be activating through independent retailers as well, and we're going to find ways to bring that story of red meat's role in a healthy diet right to where people are buying the product. And also there's other sponsors, people like Qantas, that are trying to do similar things with their sponsorship, are fantastic Australian brands that can tell that Australian story that we actually do as well. And they can often find, they have fantastic opportunities sitting on a plane. There's no reason that, there has to be an ad on the in-flight that can't be Australian beef. So we're thinking about how do we tell that story in lots of different creative ways where we have audiences. An Australian lamb. Obviously, summer lamb is the biggest thing that we do in the year, and we're well on the way to delivering another blockbuster campaign in January. A lot of people say, well, that's great, but what did it actually do? Last year's New Australia Land, putting a couple of Kiwis and Australians and meeting them in the middle of the Tasman Sea. This grew the national lamb business there by 11% over those 3 months leading up to it. So actually drove a real sales impact and one of the most successful campaigns we've ever done. And it's not just an ad, it's social media, it's celebrity chefs, it's radio partnerships. There's a whole lot of stuff behind it. Where it used to be just a 1 week and a big ad, we're now looking at over 6 and 7 weeks, and that's really getting that conversion through the retailers as well, helping to pull product through the value chain. One of the sectors we don't talk a lot about is veal, and over the last year or two, we've been doing a lot more work around really talking about the versatility of veal. It's a fantastic product to obviously substitute into a lot of the repertoire of what regular people are eating, their top 10 meals. Bolognese, stir fries, pizzas, all these sorts of things. And veal is a fantastic product to work into the repertoire. And this is really finding another home. And interestingly, with retailers, veal is an interesting one in that it gets lost on shelf. And so we've been really trying to work with them to really try and carve out a bit more of a section and really drive consumers in to actually look and ask for the product as well. So really trying to expand that shopper's repertoire for veal. Now, my dad was a mad keen fisherman, and he used to fish not far from here at Glenbourne Dam, and I used to say to him, how do you, what's the secret? How come you catch so many fish? And he said, well, you've got to find a place where the fish congregate, whether it's a narrow channel or somewhere where, they're highly concentrated. For me, this is an example of it. Taste.com is the #1 place where Australians go to for recipe content. And we've just started a partnership where beef and lamb basically will be owning much of the content in there. So there'll be all kinds of recipes for different proteins, but if you search for quick and easy meals, you search for meals in 30 minutes, if you search for light and tasty, you're going to be served much more beef and lamb content than other proteins. So this is a way of, I guess, getting the fish in the barrel and hopefully shooting them with a beef and lamb message. So we need to focus on those consumer needs, and that's really what's going to support the demand and do that better than our competitors. When it comes to working with those customers, there really isn't a major customer in Australia that MLA is now sort of not working with in some way or shape or form, whether that be big or small retailers. We're working on category strategies to help them increase the value of red meat and really help them to realise that business opportunity. Right down to a lot of food service spaces, whether it be the big commercial caterers that might be doing stadiums or aged care facilities, airlines. Everyone has a unique challenge that they're trying to face. But in a lot of it, what it comes down to is keeping red meat on plate. These businesses aren't charities. Our competitors are there and they're hungry to take our spot on menu. So we've got to give them, as we've got to do with consumers, we've got to give them the reasons to keep it on there. And that's one of the things that our team does really well. We'll go in, analyse the situation, look at how they're using red meat, look at the cuts, look at the type of menu items they've got, and think about how do we do this better. And it's remarkable some of the results we've been able to get. But how do we do that? And it's really all about collaboration. It's about delivering the latest and greatest insights, what MLA is really known for. It's about connecting customers with subject matter experts, whether it's being something about eating quality, whether it's something about sustainability, whether it's about health and nutrition. We can connect those people so we are behind the strategy of that customer. And then we look to co-create those profitable opportunities, whether it be something like, the coffee club and putting a new menu item that's going to help bring new customers into their outlets. That's a way of actually adding value to their business, not just being a supplier of an ingredient. Sometimes our story can lend a lot of opportunity and a lot of storytelling to their brand as well. This is one that I'm very excited about. This is a program that we have been undertaking with Coles for probably the last 18 months in different phases, but what it's culminated in is we've been really trying to understand not just how people eat and consume meat, but how do they shop it? And what's really interesting is, retailers tend to be very big on data, loyalty cards, Nielsen data and those things, but what they're reasonably light on is insight. What do we do with this? What does it mean for us? How do we translate this into business development opportunities? So, you might have seen, obviously, our, paddock to plate experience that we've used with VR. This is an immersive experience where we've actually got real shoppers to put the goggles on, and we literally rebuilt a Coles store where you could pick up all the products, you could look at them, turn them over, you could put them in your trolley, and we sent a whole lot of people through it, and we observed their behaviour. And the thing is, when people go into research situations like focus groups and those sort of things, there's a whole lot of biases going on. You're listening to other people and going, is that what I do? And maybe I don't want to speak up, or those sort of things. Or we're really great at post-rationalising what we did. So, what do you think about nutrition with your family? I'm always about the best nutrition with my family. Okay, let's look at your trolley. Okay, chips, chocolate, pizza. And so this is a great way of actually sort of observing people in the field. It's not perfect. People still know they're in a simulation. But there's some really interesting outtakes, and this is what's forming our strategy and how we're bringing new initiatives to someone like Coles. So here's a couple of sort of top-line insights that we've got out of that. The number one and the biggest thing is most people, when they're doing their grocery shopping, are in what they call System 1 thinking. System 1 thinking is probably what we're all doing when we're probably driving the car, which is probably not a good thing, but we're in automatic pilot. We're not going, right, check speed, check throttle, check gears, you're not doing that. You're cruising down the road, you're fiddling with the radio, you're listening to the weather report. These are automatic processes that we go through. So when people are walking down the aisle and they come into the section, you know what? They're mostly buying what they buy every week. They're very routine when it comes to it. So the opportunity for us to break that, disrupt a little bit, to get them to think about, here's a product that's worth more, or potentially, a new product that we really want to get into people's repertoires. We've got to work hard at that, and we've got to think about very specific strategies. But one of the things in that too is they're also very error prone. So they go through and they don't really, we saw a lot of piece where they wanted one product and they bought something very different. Whether that was they went to buy Scotch fillet and they bought, something else. They bought rump. And so, how do we make sure that labelling and packaging and placement on shelves, all these sort of micro strategies, all actually add up to growth opportunities. And this is a real game of inches. This is a category that's worth billions of dollars to the retailers, so they're very interested in some of those small opportunities to generate growth. The middle chart, which is a bit hard to see, but literally on the right-hand side is the beef category on the shelf, and on the left-hand side in the green is lamb. And this is eye tracking, so this is actually following the retinas basically to see where people are looking at specific products, and it's a heat map. So the red is where people have really focused, the green, a little bit less, and obviously everything else is just the things they haven't seen. So you can see a lot of products just do not get seen. If you're on the top shelf, forget it. Unless you're, I always use the bias of me when I go to a supermarket because, I see the top shelf, fine. What's the problem? Reach it, yeah, no problems. If you're down here, it's a different story. But the big thing here is, lamb is loved. People love lamb. They love the flavour of it. It's well loved as a protein. It's part of our culture. It's nowhere near as seen as beef is. So if you think about the numbers, 90% of people shop for beef every year. It's about 76% for lamb. So there's things we can do here. There's strategies that we can evolve. We can influence where products are on the shelf. And the last one was the importance of mince. Mince is shopped by almost every household and very frequently. It makes spaghetti bolognese. It makes all kinds of meals that are highly in the repertoire. Those things that are around where mince is are always shopped and always perform well. So it makes sense. Basically find the things that are popular, put the things that we really want to sell to people around it, and that's really as simple as it comes. It's not all about big strategy and moving the whole section around. Sometimes there's some simple little things. We talk about telling our story in simple ways. We put a sticker on a whole range of Aldi packs this year. And just to tell people, this is what it is to cook it. And you know what? They did a price promotion, 10%. The products that had the pack stickers, 17%. Very simple, very cost-effective little strategy. Drove an additional 1.2 million sales into there. That's retailers, that's great. What about butchers? How do we make sure that those people that are really at the front line of red meat are really well supported? Well, this year we've teamed up with Jessica Rowe, really respected journalist, great storyteller. We've put her out on the road to tell butcher stories and get a whole lot of PR about that, and that's working really fantastically. We're tying in with Olympics ticket giveaway, and one of the things we know is that for butchers to really be relevant and survive into the next generation, they need to tell their story as well. They need to, do what they do really well, and they can do things that the supermarkets can't. They can do the service. They can do the information. They can be really great advocates for our business, and it's important that we support them because it's a really profitable channel for red meat. When we get into food service, something like a big corporate caterer, we've been doing a whole lot of work about training chefs. So just because you're a chef does not mean you will be an expert in red meat. That is one of the things I have definitely learned for a various number of reasons. You're not a specialist. Sam Burke and Julie Ballard, who I'm very proud to have in my team, have been doing a fantastic work. They've trained over 300 chefs since the start of this financial year just with the Spotless group. And we've been able to incorporate things like MSA, the Good Meat program. We've had wonderful producers like Bill and Georgia there. This was at especially the MCG, which is one of the Spotless venues, really talking about how to get the best out of red meat on their menus and really telling that story. And the reason why, and this helps to justify that premium that we're charging over the other proteins. Gate Gourmet, the biggest supplier into all the airlines globally, once again telling our story through the Good Meat platform. They were bringing a whole lot of very influential customers out of Southeast Asia down to their Australian facility to see how it was all done as a bit of a money can't buy experience. We were there telling the red meat story with the virtual reality program, and that was something that we were using them as influencers to go back, talk to their followers, talk to their market, and talk about how great Australian red meat is. U-Foods, which is something that Scott touched on earlier. This is a really great Australian success story that is growing phenomenally. IGA, soon to be Woolworths, but really growing exponentially. This is something where we went in there and we talked to them, and they were doing very well, but we launched 23 new beef and lamb products into their range just before winter. And those products, I think we have 4 in their top 10 now, and we really focused on the eating quality because they've got a separate technology, they've got to make sure the cuts are right, and that's where we really added value. This is a growing trend. A lot of people are eating this way. $9.95 meal done. For some people that is not going to be their thing, but for many, this is a new channel that is a lifesaver, and for some people, this is what eating well looks like. And then when it comes to those high-end restaurants, we have our rare medium program, and what we know is that chefs learn from chefs. They don't want to hear from me, a marketing person. They don't want to hear from a fact sheet. They want to see what other chefs are doing. So what we do is we are partnering with chefs. We're giving them some of that experience of, visiting a cattle station or visiting a lambing operation, and showing the work and the dedication and the care and craft that goes into producing the best red meat in the world. We're educating about cuts and usage and inspiring, but we're also inspiring about how red meat is being used creatively in a lot of their competing outlets. And we do this because they are influencing what is going to be on plates for tomorrow. This is like the fashion world where you see the crazy gown on a catwalk in Milan. Everyone goes, who's going to wear that? Man, no one right now. But what a designer is around the world is going to pick up a type of fabric or a cut or some sort of process and go, that's interesting. And later on, It'll be in Kmart, it'll be in Target and those sort of things. It'll be democratised. It's no different with food. These are the people that are setting the trends. We're also working with young chefs. This is the Appetite for Excellence program, which is something that we're heavily involved in. One of the feedback pieces from industry was how do we make sure that young chefs are coming out with the knowledge and training that they need to really be creative and really be making fantastic, profitable dishes with red meat. And so this is really about supporting the master chefs of tomorrow. One thing I just want to leave you on, really my last slide, is there's negative sentiment out there, but as you saw this morning, in a lot of ways the media loves that and loves to feed us that. This is our brand health score, so this is what we track. Every quarter basically we're asking a large number of people, how do you feel about different things? And as you can see here, over the last 9 months, the scores for something I'm proud to serve and something I'm confident to cook and serve are staying strong and in some ways improving. So doesn't mean that we don't have a job to do. We absolutely have a job to do. One thing I've definitely learned in my career in marketing is the moment you stop is the moment when things start going south. So you've got to keep investing for the future. And for me, this is my North Star. I really believe that we need to keep investing behind making sure that people really feel proud to eat and serve and cook and sell red meat. And that's where we'll leave you today. Thank you.